Welcome to YOUCANIC. In this video we're going to show you how to replace the brake caliper and bracket on a vehicle. Here we have a Honda Ridgeline with procedure is similar for most makes and models. What you'll need to do is we're going to lose a little bit of brake fluid, so we're going to catch that down there. We're going to try to minimize the brake fluid loss as much as we can. The other thing that you got to keep in mind is that typically you end up doing the rotors and the brake pads. That's what we're going to do that later, but just for now we're going to focus just on the brake caliper replacement. So to replace it, the first thing you do is to push these brake pads a little bit out, because these rotors sometimes they can create lips right here, and then it's hard to pull out the caliper with the brake pads. So what we'll do is you can do it, put a screwdriver and push that back a little bit with a screwdriver, and that creates some room. Some makes don't create a lip here, or if they're new rotors they're not going to have a lip, but sometimes they do. So then the next step would be to break loose these bolts here for the bracket. Now this will require a breaker bar because they're all in there really tight. But we already broke these loose. Okay. So that lower bolt is off. Okay, so this upper bolt is off too. So now you gotta be careful though. We don't put too pressure on this hose because we could damage that. But here is the whole brake caliper, and do not let this hang by this hose. Okay, you don't want to let that hang down there. So it's better to just secure that there. We're gonna take the new one. As you notice, we don't have the brake pads in there yet, but we're going to do that. Okay, now these two bolts are very critical, so you want to torque these to spec. Okay, so you can call your manufacturer, or you can look at our step-by-step guide. We'll have some for reference, but it's better to just call your dealer and get those torque specs for that. And I'll show you how to put the brake pads back on. And how to also bleed the air. You know, we'll connect that hose and bleed the air out of that. Okay. So you can see that, how that slides out. We can put the new, in this case we're going to put brake pads, the old ones just for reference, even though we're about to replace the pads and the rotor on this vehicle. But just so you see. Okay, so the pad with the wear indicator goes on the inside. And then one thing that you notice here, you need shims. You need to put these in there before you put the new brake pads, and then the upper one needs one as well. Okay, and then you can put the brake pad. You can apply a little bit of brake grease right there, a little bit right there, and then right there and right there. Then you put that in, and you apply a little bit of grease there, 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 and there. Not on this side. Okay, and then you lower that. And what I'm going to do is put this bolt back in. All right, and then you want to torque that. Now, one thing to keep in mind is these guide pins, it's important to grease them. This is brand new, should be greased. But if you are installing a used unit, you can pull this out. And you can see that's greased, okay? But if you are installing a used unit, you're gonna make sure you grease that. Alright, so that goes there, and that goes there. Alright. Okay, we rotated that to allow the brake caliper to go all the way down. Then you torque this right here. And then the last thing we're going to do is replace these, reconnect the hose and bleed the air. So as far as reconnecting the hose, you might want to do a brake bleed when you do this job. So you can see we're starting to lose some brake fluid right there. So what I'm going to do is, if you got new washers here, this has washers on both sides, over here and over there, so it's recommended to replace those, otherwise you're gonna have brake fluid leaking out of that, and that's not gonna be good. But the worst thing that you could do is install this without these washers at all. Okay. Alright, so here we have a little cap that needs to come off. Put the new washer in. On that side, put the new washer. On this side, and we're going to install that bolt. And again, you need to torque this to spec. We will include some typical values in the step-by-step guide, but you should call your dealer and just ask for those torque specs that apply to your vehicle. Okay, so now we have that connected. Now in this line we have air. This is full of air. So what we're gonna do is bleed this, okay? Okay, so what I like to do is allow the gravity to feed brake fluid all the way through, fill this up, and then you'll start seeing a little bit of brake fluid starting to drip there. Then you can lock this, and then the next step would be to start the car, have somebody pump the brakes 3 times, third time keep it pressed. Then you'd come here, loosen this up, and then allow some brake fluid to come out. It'll be air and brake fluid, but then you tighten it. Once you tighten it, they release the brake pedal, they pump it 3 more times, they keep it pressed. Then you'd come here, loosen that, let some brake fluid come out, and then tighten it. You do that about 3 times or as long as there's no more air coming through that. And that's it, and then you'll have the air removed from the brake line and the brake caliper.